This podcast contains descriptions of violence against children and adult language and is not suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Suffer the Little Children, the podcast giving voices back to the victims of child abuse, murder, and their families. I'm your host, Lane, and this is episode 198, The Good Girl, with Morrene Hauser. My guest in this episode, Morrene Hauser, spent decades repressing traumatic memories from her childhood. When she finally cracked open that vault, her life all but fell apart. Morrene speaks with raw honesty about surviving a childhood marked by relentless abuse at the hands of her mother and stepfathers. Morrene is driven by a fierce desire to help others by telling her painful but inspiring story. We talk about her upcoming memoir, The Good Girl, and how writing has become both a lifeline and a form of catharsis. Morrene also shares how horses played a powerful role in her healing. This conversation is about survival, reclaiming your own narrative, naming the wounds, and finding a way forward. This is Morrene Hauser's story. I'll include links to Morrene's articles, her socials, and her published children's book, Sunshine, in the show notes. Now, I'm honored to let child abuse survivor, mother, and author Morrene Hauser introduce herself.
My name is Morrene. I live in Columbus, Ohio. I am a child abuse survivor, physical, sexual, and verbal throughout the greater part of my childhood. We moved a lot growing up. In addition to being traumatized, I was very lonely. I never got to form relationships with childhood friends or extended family. I had heard that pedophiles move around a lot, so I'm not sure if that was true in my mom's case. I was born in 1965, and we didn't have internet. We had like 3 or 4 channels on the TV throughout most of my childhood. And I had never heard of child abuse. They didn't talk about it in school. I grew up being groomed. And so I really never knew what was happening was wrong. I knew it was uncomfortable. I knew it was terrifying, but I didn't know. And I didn't tell many people because I had been groomed. I mean, part of that grooming process is silence. You do not talk about what goes on in this house. And then when I was 15, my mom was married to her 4th husband at that time. I finally fought back against the sexual abuse, and he didn't take it well. He beat me up and raped me, but that was the last time he ever touched me. But the verbal abuse continued, and the physical abuse had stopped a while back. But right after that incident, I must have started burying the sexual abuse because after, I don't even know how long it was, I didn't remember, but I got flashbacks of me being in bed with my mom and her 3rd husband, of me being in bed with my mom and her 4th husband being sexually abused. I'd get various flashbacks over the years, and I didn't know what they were. And I would kick them out of my head as soon as they started, but they always left me with a racing heart and terrified adrenaline running through my system, and it would always take me a while to regain my composure. Now, whether I was with my family, my ex-husband at this point, and children, or at work, or working out, it didn't matter. I would get a flashback out of the middle of nowhere. And I always say the grocery store flashbacks were the worst because it's this big cavernous building, which when I get a flashback, I just feel so small and I just want to curl up into a ball. And so it wasn't until almost 8.5 years ago that I finally started to face the past. But I'm not a religious person, so I know there's a higher being, and I just call it universe, creator, source. Sometimes I use the word God, but I firmly believe that the universe was reaching out to me over the years to try to get me to face the past. And I remember in my early 20s, I was in a situation, and I just remember, I can't even explain the proper words at that time, but it just was like, remember. And I just remember thinking, remember what? So that was in my early 20s. And then fast forward to November of 2016, I was on a vacation with my mother. I kept her in my life for many years because I was in extreme denial over that part of my childhood and her role in it. And we were on a road trip. And I remember we were standing in line and we were waiting to get some food. And my mom leaned down to tie her shoe. And as she did, I was watching her. It's like my reality shifted. And I can't even explain that very well. And I just heard this voice in my head that said, remember, remember, you must remember. It was a very strong voice. And I really hadn't tapped into my intuition at that time. And I can look back over the years and say, yeah, my intuition guided me there and here. But, and I just remember thinking, remember what? And it wasn't until January of 2017, I was going through a divorce. My beloved 30 plus year career was ending. I just couldn't handle the stress anymore. And there had been a lot of things that were happening in my life, just very, very stressful things. And the flashbacks were coming at me just fast and hard, and I've had insomnia throughout my life. It started in early childhood. And of course, a divorce and the ending of a career. And I wasn't sleeping much. I've had bad migraines since I was a kid also. So I was kind of a mess. But I would get on a plane whenever I could and try to escape the tension in my house because we were still living together. And I travel alone. I have no problem with that. And I went to Cancun and I went to bed one night, the night before I was supposed to go home. And every flashback that I had ever gotten just played out in my head like a series of short movies. And it was then that I knew these are memories. I knew it. And I got up and I called a friend and we talked all night. As a matter of fact, at one point he tried to get on a plane or find a flight out to help escort me home because I was having a nervous breakdown. And I think my nervous breakdown started in childhood.
Yeah.
And the next day I got home, I made it home by myself. He couldn't find a flight. And I was hospitalized voluntarily one night for a nervous breakdown. And it was then that I started to face all that had happened to me. So it's been quite a journey. It's been almost 8.5 years since I started facing the past. And the biggest part, Lane, that shocks me is how much I buried.
Yeah, and the fact that your brain could hold all of that in and not let you see it. I mean, that's a huge box in the library up there, and it's just all repressed.
Well, it was playing in living color right in front of my face with the flashbacks, and my eyes were just so firmly shut because I wasn't ready to face the past.
Sure, yeah.
And I always knew something was wrong with me. Like, what's wrong with me? And I knew it went back to my childhood, but that's as far as I was able to face it. I envy people that can face their abuse earlier in life than I did because I went through so many years of pain. What's wrong with me? The chronic illnesses, the daily migraines, and the severe insomnia. I mean, that was just brutal.
Oh, yeah.
And when I would wonder that, a little voice would say, it's from your childhood. But I never delved into it further. And there was a couple years when I was in 7th to 8th grade that I forgot. And I would wonder, every once in a while it would flash in my head, why can't I remember that time in my life? Like I can remember splotches of time, but active memories, no. And again, it would say, it goes back to your childhood. So after I was released from the hospital, I entered into a 2-week intensive outpatient therapy program. I was diagnosed with CPTSD, which, when I look back at my life, I'm running around with this undiagnosed mental illness, just trying to survive the best I could, raise my family, work a high pressured, very stressful career. And, so many things in my life started making sense. But it's been quite a journey. I mean, when I went through it, when I started facing the past, my whole life crashed. And I call that the dark night of the soul because it's been a struggle. A couple years ago, I was finally put on disability for the migraines, and I'm thankful for that, but that's not my ultimate goal in life.
Right.
My goal is an advocate for survivors, anything to help relieve their pain. And right after my nervous breakdown, I started writing about my childhood, but it was angry, cuss-filled. hard to read at times. I have now completed my book. It's called The Good Girl.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm very proud of it. I'm still waiting for a door to open for me to get it published.
Yeah, if you can get your foot in the door somewhere, that would be
right. But I also started writing articles, as I call them, and I've gotten 16 things published, on mental health. And I love to talk about mental health and ways to alleviate the pain. When I started on my journey of healing, or the dark night of the soul, I was firmly convinced that I could heal myself completely of the trauma in my body. And I prayed and I said, universe, please get me through this. And I promised to share my knowledge far and wide. Well, this is the stage I'm at. So I really do appreciate you having me on your podcast. That means a lot.
Oh, no problem at all. I started reading some of your articles and they're on Recovery Diaries and the CPTSD Foundation websites, right? Are there others that I missed?
I just got another one published. The OC87 Recovery Diaries is going to publish another article of mine in November. So I'm extremely excited about that. And I'm just very flattered that people hear me.
Yes.
Now it's on a very small scale.
But it's more than you were being heard a long, long time ago. So
exactly.
Must feel validating.
Yes. Yes. And, when I look back at my childhood, I have a memory of a few Christmases. I have a memory of a handful of birthdays. I have no memory of sitting down for a Thanksgiving meal. I know we did. So it's just like, I guess the abuse was happening. I didn't even get a break on a holiday,
I'll pause here for a quick word from my sponsors.
So that's pretty much who I am in a nutshell. I was a court reporter for a little over 30 years.
Wow, that must have been pretty traumatic in some ways too.
Well, I tell you, Lane, the universe must have been watching out for me because a lot of times I would go into court. We have a big case coming up. I wouldn't know what it's about until I got there. Sometimes I didn't think to ask, but we did a few. I remember some child abuse cases during my career, but thank God this was before, or it wasn't before internet, but internet wasn't as strong as it is now. I have heard that if it's a child porn case or, if there's images like video or pictures, that they will show those to the jury. And me as the court reporter, I would have seen it also. And I'm so thankful that I never got into a situation like that. But, the universe was watching out for me. This girl cannot handle that kind of a trial.
Definitely not. I was reading your one article this morning where you mentioned sex trafficking.
Mm-hmm. So you saw that I was trafficked, right? Or did I?
You did mention that, yeah.
So that was definitely one of the flashbacks. And that was really hard for me to wrap my head around. It's like, look, I know all this bad stuff happened. I remember some really bad things, active memories versus flashbacks, I call them. But being sex trafficked at truck stops, it's like, really? If that really happened to me, how am I still here? Even though I've had a lot of problems in my life, how did I not become a drug abuser? Or just so many bad things could have happened. Thank God my brain processed a little differently. So I decided to do a little homework. My mother's fourth husband, I remembered where he lived in Wisconsin. I remembered his girlfriend's name, and I knew she had a couple of kids. Now, he was, without getting too complicated, he was dating this girlfriend and living with her in Wisconsin. We were living in California when my mom and he met. My mom had just gotten her truck driver's CDL, and he was a truck driver. So anyway, when he and my mom got together, I found out years later that he never told his girlfriend that he had married my mother. He just didn't go home one day. Without getting into more, it's all covered in The Good Girl, my book. My mother had some secrets of her own, but they were living far apart. So it was easy to keep those secrets until they joined up. So last year, I decided to do a little research. I was on Facebook. I said, I'm looking for a private investigator of sorts. I need a little bit of information. My funds are extremely limited. I gave a little background on myself. And this very, very kind lady named Charlene immediately contacted me via Messenger. I can help you. I'm not a licensed investigator, but I have reunited many people over the years. And, she was very kind. She got the address of that house like in no time. And I was trying to find the ex-girlfriend. I kind of figured she might be deceased by now. I'm 60, so who knows how old she was at the time, but I knew she had kids. And long story, I took that address and punched it into Google, and I looked up the inhabitants over the years. That lady lived there. Her name was Audrey. So of all the crazy things, Charlene got me some numbers of the kids, try this, try that. And one seemed very viable. Like Charlene had been on this lady's Facebook site. And then she screenshotted some pictures. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's my mom's fourth husband, who is deceased at this point. Thank God.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah. He died from prostate cancer, which I think is very interesting, very painful death that he deserved. So one night, we nailed it down like this woman is definitely a daughter. I thought, okay, I'm going to call her. But who answers their phone to a number they don't know nowadays? I don't. And I just said some prayers, and this beautiful woman answered the phone. And then I knew I had not much time to introduce myself. She was so kind. She knew my mom's fourth ex-husband. She was definitely one of the stepchildren. Well, they weren't married, her mom and my mom's ex-husband. She said he was very abusive. She said that she has a sister the same age, and they would never be caught alone with him. His name was Emil, Emil, just to give him a name. And she said, but he would come up and make inappropriate comments and pinch them in the chest as teenagers. I mean, that's just gross. But their brother took the brunt of it. He would go with Emil in the semi during the week. And he was abused. It took him years before he was finally able to talk about it. And this poor man has had so many problems in his life, substance abuse, problems with the law. He's currently incarcerated. And so this lady and I shared so many things about Emil that we knew we both had interactions with him. And I told her about what I had went through. And she said, definitely, there was money exchanged for sex at truck stops. It happened to my brother.
Oh, wow.
It happened to you. But I just really needed to clarify that. When I started on this journey, nobody wanted to prove me wrong more than myself. It's like, please tell me these heinous things did not happen. I didn't want to make false accusations against people that were innocent, but I knew they weren't. One active memory I always remembered, I grew up with horses, and I'm so thankful because they really got me through the rough years of my childhood. And one summer, we took this fantastic trip with our horses. Emil didn't ride. It was just my mom and I. So they had this big, huge custom painted horse trailer with nice living quarters. And we went out to the Dakotas and Wyoming, and we were riding all over the place. And I don't remember how this man, specifically how he showed up, but we started horseback riding with this guy. And I think his last name was Early. That was all we called him, was Early. I remember Early paid a lot of attention to me. I was 15 at the time. And Early was very complimentary to me. And I was really uncomfortable with that because I wasn't used to being, unless I was being abused, I was ignored.
Yeah.
And he wanted me to come and live on his ranch. And, he was going to train me to show his horses because he had a big, huge ranch with lots of show horses. And I remember being excited about that because I love horses. And, my mom and Emil were very encouraging. I remember one day we were standing in the barn, in Early's barn during our vacation. Early had went somewhere in the house or something. And my mom turned to Emil and she said, oh, Early really likes Morrene. He would definitely try something with her. Oh. Now, that was an active memory. And I would think about it over the years. And I knew what was happening, but I wasn't ready to face it. I didn't end up staying. And my mom was very upset about that because she was selling me to a pedophile. Emil was out of work again. They needed the money. My mom was working 2 jobs. I think it was shortly after he raped me and I fought back that he went back to work. For a period of 1.5 to 2 years, I was raped on a daily basis. This man took my virginity. I mean, it was really a bad situation. And it's like, I always remembered the verbal and physical abuse, but the sexual had just been buried. I just realized that it will be a lifelong journey. And I'm in the best place that I've ever been.
Good.
Although I just want more things to happen. I want to help more people. And I just feel so constrained at times with disability, but I also have to be thankful for it. As much as it makes me crazy, I'm also thankful.
Right. There's got to be a silver lining somewhere.
Yeah.
I think you have a lot that could help people. So I really do hope that those doors open, because that would be very helpful for other people to be able to speak with someone like you who's been through so much and come out the other side.
Right. And yeah, I'm willing to talk. I will talk about any part of my journey. I mean, I'm not shy. I don't have the secrets that I used to. I mean, my whole life was a secret, but I wrote my book. I'm in the process of writing another book about my healing. I write articles. I'm looking for more podcasts to be on.
How do you feel that the repressed memories and everything that did happen to you affected your adulthood before you remembered everything?
Gosh, Lane.
It's a tough one.
I mean, I had so many problems from not facing my past. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. Oh, I was a functioning alcoholic for years. Drinking was the only time in my day that it took me out of the flashbacks. It took me out of the depression. It took me out of the anxiety. And for 2 or 3 hours every evening, I was happy. I could even laugh. But in my early 20s, my poor nervous system was so dysregulated, which definitely contributed to the insomnia. But my girlfriends and I were out at one point 7 nights a week, and I had to cut that down to 5 because it was too hard going into court the next day, hungover, 4 hours of sleep with a migraine. I was very wild in my younger years, but I didn't know what to do with all of that energy inside of me, but I didn't recognize it as such at that time like I do now. It's like now I can clearly see the mantra in my mind was, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? And that's one of the articles I wrote, What's Wrong with Me, for the CPTSD Foundation. And I got a number of replies to that from readers, which I really appreciated. Like, I wondered the same thing until I was able to face my past. But
yeah,
when I was in my early 20s, I was living in California. And I would just get in my car at night because if I couldn't sleep, and the adrenaline was just, I was so anxious and so nervous and so depressed. And there was a stretch, it probably still is there, a stretch of highway from the Riverside, California area to Palm Springs. And a lot of times it was deserted at night and people drove really fast on there. And I would get on that stretch of highway and I would 80, 90, 100 miles an hour. And all the while I'd be like, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? And the adrenaline would just be running through my system.
That's another form of self-medication, I would think.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. And all of those years, I just tried to put on this persona of a happy person. But I would look at other people around me and think, do you feel as bad as I do inside? Other than the depression, I could never really put a name on it because I hadn't faced things.
Yeah, sure. So it's just, I'm broken and I have no answers.
Right. But then again, when I go home in the evening, I could just let that false persona down and drink.
I feel like a lot of abuse survivors, either in the midst of it or afterward, have that dual almost personality thing going on. And I lived with a domestic abuse situation for almost 20 years. And when I would go to work, I would always say, well, not out loud to myself, I'd say I deserve an Oscar for the performance I'm putting on, because no one would ever know.
Yes.
And you have to find a way to cope. So it's understandable that you would have alcohol to turn to, and there's a lot going on in your head, and some of it you haven't even dealt with yet. Time for another quick sponsor break.
It's funny. As I started my healing process and more memories came through, another article, that's yet to be published by the OC 87 Recovery Diaries, is called The Little Girl Within Me. I can't remember the full, but it's like reparenting your inner child.
Okay.
And I just remember I used to feel like this little presence by my side, and my arms would ache, like to comfort someone. But it would just kind of come in my head and leave. It's like, I don't know what that is. I have to go ride my horse or clean my apartment or something or write. And one day I sat down to meditate to figure out what it was because it wasn't going away. And I saw myself at 5 to 6 years old. And I knew that this young child that was feeling the loss of her mother's love, that's when I really felt it, was reaching out for love and comfort that I never got. I never was mothered as a child. And so every day that I sat down, and I can feel her by my side right now, but every day I sat down to meditate, that little girl would crawl into my lap and I would just love her as I had never been loved as a child.
You just gave me goosebumps.
Yeah, I have them too. I have them too. And then other younger versions of me would enter in the picture, like the teenage version. I just saw her with her arms over her chest and her head down and just angry, very angry and filled with pain. And, I held the newborn baby that I once was. And it was just such a healing time. I no longer feel that little presence by my side. But if I think about her, she's there. She is there. But as those versions of me started to come out, I could feel that the floodgates of what happened so many years ago and all the 6 secrets, they were finally feeling comfortable to share what happened versus being shut down.
That's a huge part of healing. It has to be.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I went into my marriage and motherhood without any tools other than observing other people. I had to find my way through my marriage, through, raising my children.
Without any examples.
Yeah. And an undiagnosed mental health condition, but I did the best I could. I probably gave a little too much, but they remember their childhood. They remember birthdays. They remember Christmases. They don't have substance abuse issues. They sleep. So.
And then you did everything that your mother didn't. And that's fantastic that you not only broke that cycle, but also were able to feel that for yourself.
Well, but I was never present. I used to get a lot of panic attacks.
Sure. You were probably in fight or flight for years.
Yes, absolutely. And the CPTSD started back in my childhood years. I mean, I just wonder when that started, when I would have been diagnosed with that, at what age. And I'm thankful, and I'm sorry that you were in a domestic abuse situation.
I'm glad I was, actually.
Oh, it's taught you a lot.
It has. That's the thing.
And you've come out to the other side.
You become an expert in things you never wanted to or never thought you would.
And how can you talk about things if you haven't experienced it?
Just like they say, write what you know. Well, yeah, it's the same thing with talking about it.
Well, I'm thankful I didn't end up in that situation. And I think there's 2 reasons. One is when my mom would get a new man in her life, and there were the boyfriends also. So there were the husbands and the boyfriends. She was married once before I was born. But anyway, when she would get a new man in her life, we had to cater to them, laugh at every joke. And I was always the one like, go get me something to drink, go get me something to eat, So we could never upset the man, and whatever they wanted, they got. But once the honeymoon period wore off, my mother was, she had her own problems, obviously, but she never aired any grievances, and she would just let them build up in her mind until one day she exploded. And the day she exploded is when the honeymoon was over, and that's when things would slowly go downhill. So I saw that, I guess, protective measure with my mom, like, hey, you're not going to do this to me. You're not going to, whatever. And my mom, once the honeymoon period was over, she gave as good as she got. I mean,
she gave them an idea of who she was that wasn't entirely true.
Yeah. But also, too, when I was in my early 20s and I was single and I was out partying with my friends all the time, I would date here and there. But deep down inside, I didn't want a man with problems because I knew I had enough of my own. So, there's 2 things that saved me from an abusive situation because I could very easily have went into that.
Oh, sure.
My ex-husband and I have been divorced almost 8 years. I'm actually at his house right now.
Okay. See, I'm in the same situation where we're friends now.
Isn't that awesome?
It's so strange, but yes, it's much better.
Isn't that awesome? I mean, I think that is such a beautiful thing. And if you can do it, my kids had a hard time. They're like, you shouldn't be friends. You should hate each other. And it's like, no, we've been able to overcome whatever anger. He's not a bad person. I'm not a bad person. But when you get a divorce and a nervous breakdown, that it's not always the most healthy of circumstances. So yeah, I live in a little apartment about 10 minutes away, and I'm over here most days if I'm not riding my horse. I have a horse, but I'm here most days writing, and he travels, so I help care for the dogs. And I'm thankful. I'm very thankful that we could set aside that anger, and he's a friend.
That's great.
He doesn't understand me.
Well, sometimes it's hard, especially if he has not gone through certain things. Yeah.
No, he hasn't. But, good for him.
And, for you to be friends so that you don't have to constantly be battling back and forth with the kids and about the kids. And even though they're grown, it's still like holidays. And that's so much better for you.
Oh,
and for them.
I'm single right now. I don't foresee that for the rest of my life. I mean, I'm ready for a relationship. I'm ready for the next phase of my life. But, at this point, we have Thanksgivings together and we do Christmas. And usually every Sunday we do a family meal. So it's a very good thing. And I think at some point my kids will say, wow, I really give mom and dad a lot of credit. I don't think they're there quite yet.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. I think they're still a little bit embarrassed, but I hope that will give them a good blueprint, at least that part, for their lives. There's no reason to hate.
That's the thing. You don't need more animosity in your life, especially when you're dealing with what's already going on for you and in your mind, and having to let go of all of that, since you can't exactly face these men. And you said your mom's no longer a part of your life, so you're not facing her as far as that goes. But did you get any type of closure, or was no contact your closure for her?
Well, this is funny. It was pretty much no contact. In January of 2017, when I was on vacation and, all of the memories came back, I texted her and I said, you are a fucking pedophile. Now, Lane, I would never be disrespectful to my mother like that. I've never called her names, but I knew. And I said, I can't believe that you let all of those men abuse me. I can't believe you did the things you did to me. And I said, you belong in prison. And I had texted her. I couldn't talk to her. She lived in another state also. So that was easy. I never heard back from her. Now, she knew I was going through a divorce. She knew I was coming to the end of my career, and she knew I was under a great, great deal of stress. Now, if that had been one of my children who made an allegation like that, and I knew it was not true, Lane, there would not have been any door strong enough for me, wall tall enough. I would have been there at their side. What is going on? I'm here for you. I love you. We will get through this. What's going on? I never heard from my mother.
That is pretty telling.
Yeah. And I heard through a family friend that she was terrified of me. She got extra lights around her house and security, like I was going to come and hurt her.
Oh.
And I just think, I don't hurt people. Since I had been physically abused, you either go that route or you don't. I didn't. I don't hurt people. Even disciplining my kids, the best thing that happened for me in discipline was getting them cell phones. So it's like, if you do that again, I'm taking away your cell phone.
True, exactly.
But as far as I know, she's still alive. And then I have an older brother who's 11 months older than me. He was also abused, but he, you either face it or you don't. And at one point in my life, I would have been like, I wasn't sexually abused. I was verbally and physically abused, but no, I mean, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And our relationship was fractured years ago due to the abuse. I mean, there were a lot of sick and unnatural things that happened in our home. And after a while, my brother even disappeared from memory. I was in counseling one time and my counselor's like, what about your brother? Did he live at this particular house? Because, we moved a lot. And I'm like, I had forgotten. And I forgot where his room was. I mean, again, I know why I forgot. I know. But my brother, he's a very angry, pain-filled man. We haven't talked in years. I did reach out to him when the memories started coming through. And he's just like, Morrene is a liar. That never happened. As far as I know, he still has a relationship with my mom. But, again, I look back and I would have said the same thing. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, if he's not ready or if he's never ready.
Right. But I always say that if he wants to face the past, I'm here for him. Even though he's not been a nice person to me, he was very abusive to me growing up with his verbal and physical abuse.
Mm-hmm.
I still care. And actually, in my early 20s, when we were in our early 20s, I tried to have a relationship with him. I called every week, and that was when you had to pay per minute.
Oh, yes.
So, I called him every week. He would never call me because he didn't want to spend the money, even though he had it. But he would talk about himself the whole time. And one day, I don't even remember how this came up, but I just said, John, I don't even think you love me anymore. And I don't remember what led up to me saying that. But he said, I don't want to hear that shit. And at another point in that conversation, he called me stupid. I'm like, stupid, like what? Like mentally handicapped? But I didn't think, I was so shocked by that statement. I'm like, what part of me is stupid? I went to college and I'm working a very technical and stressful career. A stupid person doesn't do that. But I am thinking he was taught to hate me from a young age. And then the abuse didn't help. He had nobody to put his anger and pain on but his younger, innocent, helpless sister.
And he was a child at the same time. And
Mm-hmm.
oh, that's sad.
Yeah, it is. But, and parts of my family, and I don't have a large family, we also didn't live near them because we moved so much. They're calling me a liar. And I'm like, well, why would I do that? Do you think I just took a break from my life and lost my career, my marriage, my sanity, and made all these false allegations?
For attention.
Right. I'm just bored with life. Oh, I know it'll juice it up. But also, too, I've said to other people, if I was this raving lunatic making false allegations, why wouldn't I have done that to other people?
Right.
There were other people that surrounded me. And I don't know.
It seems like something a teenager would be more likely to make up for attention than a grown adult.
Right. And Lane, this is crazy. But for years, I kept my mother in my life for years. And I counted her as one of my best friends, even though she was so toxic to me. I just overlooked it all. I mean, I was a master at burying my head in the sand where my mother was concerned because I desperately needed a mother.
Yeah, and she never gave you that.
No, I'm not going to have that in my life, obviously. But I just always wanted somebody to love me and believe in me and protect me. And that was not the woman I was born to.
Now for another word from my sponsors.
I believe we come onto this earth and we choose the life we live beforehand. Now, this might be extreme, but, to learn the lessons we need to. So I'm just thinking if that is the case, then I'm here to help other people by sharing my story.
I saw a quote yesterday that said, God doesn't choose the qualified, he qualifies the chosen.
Mm-hmm. That's a good one.
I'm not even a terribly religious person, but that spoke to me. It felt so personal. So I think that sounds right. You choose the life ahead of time and then you come into it and there you go.
Learn the lessons you need to. Well, it's always a learning journey, isn't it?
Oh, for sure. Whether you like it or not, you're going to learn something.
Right. I know some days I'm like, how many more damn lessons do I have to learn?
Right. I wanted to talk to you about the concept of bouncing. When I saw that article, that just hit me right between the eyes.
You understand that?
And I wonder if that is. Yeah, it feels like that could be a trauma response for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I never used to be like that. As a teenager, a child, never had those sorts of issues. But now it's like, forget it. I can move from one task to another without completing anything, like I'm the CEO of it.
Yeah. I'm better at that. I've really been able to heal my nervous system the best I can. I still have to keep my stress levels low, and I'm finally sleeping.
Good.
I have to take sleep aids.
Whatever it takes.
Yeah, and a pot gummy to get me to sleep and keep me to sleep. I don't know if I hope that.
That's fine with me.
Yeah.
Sometimes I have to do the same things, just whatever it takes, because anxiety is nasty in every way.
And how do you survive on 2, 3, 4 hours a night for days, weeks at a time? After a while, you just start going bonkers.
Exactly.
But even despite taking all that stuff, I still had operative word, a problem sleeping. But it wasn't until I decided to start addressing the insomnia. Like, I'm going to see what I can do to heal this. I've healed so much of my life and not even sure I like that word healed. What's another word? Always healing, but
Addressed is a good one, though, I think,
yeah,
because you're at least pointing it out to yourself and saying, I'm going to do something about this.
yes. And so one day I said, going to bed is a terrifying thing for me. And I've dealt with that for years. So I decided to make my room comfortable. Being in front of a blue screen at night doesn't bother me. So I would put pillows behind me and on either side of me, and I'd watch a good movie or read a book just to make my room a place that's not terrifying. And then I got a book on curing insomnia, and it started talking about sleep deprivation. I'm like, oh, hell no. I've done that before and I've been awake all night. I'm not doing it. So I just kind of devised my own little plan, and I've been on a good sleeping schedule for almost 2 years. And I'm like, oh, thank you, universe. And another thing I do, maybe you already do this, but I read about this breathing technique, which really, really relaxes my nervous system.
Oh,
You take a deep breath in for 4 and you hold it for 7, and then you slowly let it out for 8. You do a number of those and that's going to relax you. So, and another thing I do is if I wake up, instead of praying to the universe and saying, please let me sleep, one day I saw myself as a sitting duck, and I just felt like the universe was saying, you don't have to be a sitting duck. Take matters into your own hands. So I'm just like, I'm going to sleep until 7. I'm going to sleep until 7. And most of the time I do.
wow. That's great.
Yeah. I don't understand a lot of times with the universe and what's going on, but all I want to be is healed.
Yeah, exactly. And I know they talk about manifesting a lot, and maybe that's what that is.
Well, I do a lot of that too. I'm like working hard to manifest myself out of the situation I'm in, which I'm thankful, but it still ties my hands because I have so much that I want to do and accomplish.
I can understand that.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about how horses helped you through all of this? Because I think that's a fascinating part of it.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. You know, my mom grew up with horses. She grew up in a very dysfunctional household. And so when I was born, my mom had horses and, you know, a little girl around horses. I mean, I was hooked. And I got my first pony when I was 7, and she was just a little monster. I was terrified of her, but she taught me a lot, and I just absolutely adored her.
And that was Sunshine.
Sunshine, yeah. And when the 4th husband came into the picture and we moved back to Wisconsin, Sunshine was left behind. I was devastated.
Sure.
And then my mom brought her 2 Arabians along. And I don't know if you know about horses, but Arabians are very high-spirited horses. You have to have a lot of skill to ride an Arabian. And I didn't have that skill, but shortly after we moved, the horses' names were Jazan and Quasar, very Arabian.
Okay.
Yeah. I was in Jazan's stall one day brushing him. I was 9, and I knew I could ride that horse without a doubt. And I said to my mom, I want to ride Jazan. And I knew she was remembering me and Sunshine, because Sunshine just was such a little stink pot. And finally, my mom just shrugged her shoulders and she saddled him up. And I took off like I had been riding. You know what I mean? I mean, there was no fear, none. And I think that fear was just replaced by the 4th husband, who was...
Yeah, the worst, sounds like.
Yeah. So when I left home to go to college, you know, that was the first time I didn't have a horse. But then as I started going through my nervous breakdown and my marriage ending, I started looking at horses on the internet. And I hadn't planned on getting one. And then I saw my horse, and Lane, my heart just stopped. It's like, I knew I had to go see that horse. He's an Arabian.
Oh, wow.
An Arabian paint. And my friend and I made the 2-hour drive. And after 2.5 hours later, I was the owner of a horse. So he got me through my nervous breakdown and my divorce. And I still have him. Yeah, he is very much a part of my life.
Is he the one that you're riding in the pictures on the recovery diaries?
Yes.
Okay. Not Tex. That's a different one that you were posing with.
Yeah, that was Tex.
Okay.
I had when I got Sunshine published and, you know, everything had closed down, I started doing children's book readings at the barn of Sunshine in front of a horse.
Oh, that's so cool.
How cool is that?
Yeah, that's amazing.
Well, it wasn't that cool because I got, you know, teachers and librarians reaching out to me, but I wanted to make money selling my book.
Yes.
And I didn't. What I should have done in hindsight was gotten flyers printed up and sent to the school to take home with the kids.
Yeah.
They broadcast me into the classroom. And it was so much fun. And just the kids would ask the funniest questions.
For sure.
How old are you? Do you like tacos? I mean, I just loved interacting with the kids, but I just quit doing it after all because it wore me out and I wasn't making any money. It's like, look, I'll give you a free reading.
Yeah, maybe buy the book.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
They're like, yeah, we'll put it in the newsletter, but it didn't occur to me. You need to send it home with a paper form to the,
Right. Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's what that picture was. But I didn't do that very long. But it really saddened me when I couldn't make that, a viable little business. But I think the universe was saying, no, that's not your path.
Right. Right. Yeah, I saw you had written a second one about Freckles and Gracie. Was that something you just kind of?
Well, no, I still have this very much in my mind.
Oh, good.
There's nothing I can really do because my hands are tied. I hate to keep saying that, but it's true.
I know finances and everything. It really matters, unfortunately.
It sure does. And yeah, that book is called Horses Love French Fries. And I had been mentoring a little girl through Big Sisters, Little Sisters. I mentored her for 3 years. She turned into a teenager and, I became boring. So,
of course, all adults are boring.
Exactly. But Horses Love French Fries I used her as my muse.
Oh,
yeah. And I've written another book and I want to make it a series, but I'm just kind of busy right now writing about mental health in my current book.
Yeah. There's only so much time in the day.
Exactly.
Wow. So you are a busy lady. You've got things going on everywhere.
And then other days I'm just on the couch. It's like, okay, I'm not feeling well today. My head hurts.
Yeah.
And I just have to respect what my body's saying. But I'm at least able to lay on the couch without having panic attacks.
Well, that's good.
So there's huge progress.
Take the good with the bad. You have to do that.
Yes.
Well, that's good. I'm glad you kind of have different things going on too. It's not just this one path that you got stuck on. What other projects do you have planned?
Well, I'm trying to get on as many podcasts as I can. I mean, I'm reaching out to people. I'm trying to make a name for myself. I'm not quite sure how to do that other than with my writing. I'm writing a book about my healing.
That's great.
And it's just, Lane, you're a writer, so you know this. When I write, especially about what I've been through, there's so many aha moments. It's like, wow,
right.
That's why I did that. And wow, look how far I've come since I was that person. My best friend, Tony, she is the only childhood friend I have. We met at the one school that I went to the longest, which was 5 years, and she knew about the abuse, but we talk every day. And a lot of times we talk about mental health and, she's had her challenges in life too. And we've done so much healing together. I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah, it's amazing to hold on to a childhood friend, period, let alone for someone who wasn't able to stay places long enough to make them.
Right. And I guess I did tell her what was going on in my house. I didn't tell adults because when you're groomed,
you didn't have any experience that adults would believe you anyway.
Right. And adults were scary to me. They were authority figures. And
well, I'm grateful that you reached out because I think you really do have an important story to tell and journey to share, and that you do have the ability to help people with that. So I really hope that we're able to get your voice amplified and that you can get on the path that you want to be on. That would be amazing for you.
That's awesome. I really appreciate you having me on your podcast, and I really enjoyed talking to you, Lane.
You too. And anything that I can do to help, if you want me to share posts or whatever it is, just let me know. Huge thanks to Morrene for sharing her story so openly and honestly. I wish her nothing but the best with publishing her memoir, The Good Girl, as well as her next children's book, Horses Love French Fries. Remember to check the show notes for links to more of Morrene's work, including her beautifully illustrated children's book, Sunshine. That's it for this episode. Join me next time for another child's story. If you like the show, please follow or subscribe to Suffer the Little Children on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, Spreaker, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast listening app. And please leave me a 5-star rating and a positive review on your favorite podcast platform. Visit the website at sufferthelittleChildrenPod.com. You can support the show by visiting patreon.com/stlcpod, where you can become a patron for rewards ranging from a shout out by name on the show to exclusive gifts. You can also support the show at ko-fi.com/stlcpod. Follow the podcast on Facebook and Instagram at Suffer the Little Children Pod and on TikTok at STLCpod. View photos related to today's episode on Facebook. This podcast is researched, written, hosted, edited, and produced by Lane. Intro theme music is by Dream Note Music, and all music for the show is licensed from audiojungle.net. For more information about preventing or reporting child abuse, visit childhelp.org or call your area's child abuse hotline. And remember, if you see something, say something.